Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name's Ketevan, and this video I want to talk about Iceland. So I'm super excited that one of the cities for Invisible Cities is Iceland this month. I'm like very excited, mostly because I have lots of Icelandic literature on my shelves that need to get read. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to sort of encourage myself a bit. The first book I read is not a novel, it's a collection of folk tales, and it's called The Little Book of the Hidden People by Alda Sigmundsdóttir, and the tagline is 20 stories of elves from Icelandic folklore. So this is just a very short, very sweet little collection of folk tales. Alda Sigmundsdóttir is actually a journalist, an Icelandic journalist, who also has degrees in mythology and folklore and English, so she often writes about these topics in Icelandic culture in general. She self-publishes actually a bunch of these little books from her own imprint, and she has I think about 12 of them now, and this is the one I received for my birthday a couple years ago, and I'm finally getting to read it. I finished it just last night, and I really enjoyed it. The actual stories, of course, are, you know, the original texts that she's translating from are from the mid-1800s, so they're, you know, typical style of folklore, like very abrupt, very, you know, like this is the lesson. And so on their own, they're not super compelling, but after each one, she adds a note to the end, either explaining the context or interpreting them, and it's really nice. I really appreciate it, and she does a really good job sort of adding in extra information exactly where it's needed, and without it being too much, of course, because too much can make it too much. Yeah, so she either explains kind of like things we might not understand as outsiders, or she just kind of, you know, explains how this kind of story or this kind of thing extends into Icelandic culture today. You know, one thing I'm remembering is like in one of the stories, someone mentions that they went godding at the window, like God, like a deity. And when I read it, I honestly thought it was a typo. And then, of course, in her notes, she's like, yeah, you might be confused as to what godding the window is. And I'm like, huh, you're right. I was confused. And it's basically because at night, once the sun sets, if someone knocks on your door, it could be an elf or a hidden people or hidden person. So if you don't want to answer the door to an elf, because then they're like tricksters and they might, you know, harm you. So what people did instead was they knocked on the window and they said something, I don't remember exactly what they said, but basically they used the word God, because an elf could never use the word God because they're pagan and like can't, you know, they aren't able to say the word God. So if someone knocked and said, oh, it's God, like you knew that they were human, you could answer the door. And that turned into a verb, godding the window, which I found fantastic. And another one was that, I wish I took down what it was called, but basically every Icelandic peasant had a bowl, a wooden bowl that had a lid with hinges. And essentially what everyone would do is they would be allotted their food for either the meal, the day, or the week from the mistress of the house. And that bowl was theirs, and it was their job to, like, you know, figure out how to ration their own food for themselves based on this bowl. And so like everyone had this bowl. And she explained that today, modern Icelandic people look at it and they just immediately get the heebie-jeebies and are like, oh, what is that? That's gross, you know, like, not what is that, but like, they're grossed out by the sight of this bowl, and it's because the vast majority of the population ended up getting tapeworm from the bowls because they would let dogs lick the bowls clean instead of wasting water to wash out the bowls, which makes sense because water is a precious resource, and it might, you know, if you didn't know about tapeworm, you would think, let's let the dogs lick them clean, you know, but then everyone ended up getting tapeworm from it. So it was definitely like a fantastic little like tidbit that I'm not sure would come up in any other context. So that was really cool to have included. But anyway, I really enjoyed this one. It was a really good foundation to get me in the right mood and getting me more excited for the other Icelandic books I have ready to go. Now, I won't probably be reading all of these just because there's three's a lot. I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably start with the one least likely to read, which is The Greenhouse by, now see, is it Author or Older? I can't tell because I don't know, sometimes it's spelled A-U-D-U-R, but sometimes they just turn that like letter that's like a D in Icelandic into a D in English, but that's not the same letter. I don't know. whatever, Ava Ólafsdóttir, and this one is translated by Brian FitzGibbon. Basically, this is the story of a young man who is leaving his childhood home, leaving behind everything he knows in search of a new future. And right before he leaves, his mother dies, and before she dies, she tells him that he needs to stay back and take care of the greenhouse where they grow a very rare rose together. As he's, you know, still thinking about leaving, he finds out that someone he slept with in that very greenhouse is pregnant. So he's basically freaking out, trying to handle this rose situation. He ends up in a monastery. Yeah, it just seems like a really wild and fun story. So I don't know. I put it on my list a while back ago, and my husband, I think, got it for my birthday like a couple of years ago. So I've been waiting to read this, and I probably won't read it this month, but it's on there as a possibility. And then I at first really wanted to start with Paradise Reclaimed by Halldór Laxness. And this one is, I'll put the translator in the front. The translator is Magnusson. This is, mostly I picked this because it's, he's a Nobel Prize winner, so it kind of fits both my goals of reading translated foreign literature and Nobel Prize winners. But it doesn't fit my Read Around the World series, so in the sense that it has to be about Icelandic people in Iceland. So this one is about a farmer who goes to Utah because he becomes a Mormon. And he's going back and forth, and this is not the first time I've heard of Icelandic people becoming Mormons, so I really want to do a little more research on why that was necessarily. But yeah, basically the family breaks apart and is reunited and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of like a family epic saga, but with lots of folklore intertwined. So that was my #1 pick, but I decided to hold off because actually Heaven and Hell by Jan Kalman Stefánsson was, you know, the one that really like grabbed my attention in terms of the synopsis. And where's the translator? Hello. Philip Roughton? Not sure. But this is basically about a young fisherman who leaves his little village in secret to return a book to a blind old sea captain beyond the mountains. And then basically he, you know, is on this journey and he learns new things about stuff. And it just seems, I don't know, like, it's funny, the synopsis isn't that exciting. But I don't know, it says Heaven and Hell navigates the depths of despair to celebrate the redemptive power of friendship. Set at the turn of the 20th century, it is a reading experience as intense as the forces of Icelandic landscapes themselves. I don't know, this one's calling to me, and so I think I'm going to read this one next. But anyway, those are my options for Icelandic literature. What are you reading for Iceland? I'm really curious. And also, as always, to fit my Read Around the World challenge, does anyone know of any trans Icelandic authors? Because that would be awesome. I haven't like done hardcore heavy-duty research, but I really would like to know if you've heard of any. I probably won't make another video just about Iceland, but I'll probably talk about these in my reading wrap-up videos as I read them. So yeah, I hope you have a great reading month and you find something really nice for Iceland to read if you're following the Invisible Cities challenge. And until next time, bye!